There's nothing they can do. The oil is heading south. It's still on the pathway south. So, but I was surprised when the president said he's the substantive minister for petroleum. I said, sir, you're sitting on a seat that is shaky. So there's no alternative. I'm expecting the Minister for Solid Minerals, I'm expecting Fayemi to come out with innovation.
And he's been speaking.
And beyond the speaking, I'm expecting the Minister for the
Trade.
Triple Minister for Power,
Works and Housing.
Which I've got, and I'm gleaning from a couple of things I said, what he wants to do in terms of microgrids and embedded power, come out with innovation.
And earlier on, you were trying to link that with the average Nigerian, talking about the micro economy, and you tied that with power.
Yeah, what I'm saying here is that, and this is key, this whole thing needs to percolate down, this issue of non-oil revenue generation. The people are suffering already. I don't know whether I have told you, they're suffering. Don't go for their jugular. Don't tell me you're increasing any taxes, which of course, thank God we didn't see any of those. But you make it people who are already there to make sure that they pay. You see, there are two ways to get it. It's a case of a chicken and an egg. If you grow the economy, if you get the SMEs to say, they grow them in 1 or 2 years, by the third or fourth year, you begin to tax them. But if you go for those ones that are there, you just kill them and you just go back to status quo. So I'm expecting that going for the non-oil revenue is a good way to go. Investing heavily on infrastructure. If you reflect government really doesn't have power to reflect the system. It's the private sector. All they just need to do is to make bold statements. We're going to do roads. We're going to build airports. We're going to do seaports. We're going to do this. The people that would, that's why I was concerned about all those, fines you were doing the multinationals. I was concerned, I spoke out. Because these are the people that will suck in your people as they invest in your country.
But you haven't spoken about,
so you must encourage them.
If we should have a deliberate policy on PPP.
I was going to come to that because, this is something that is dear to my heart. Because it is one thing that government does not need to spend. What government will spend in driving the economy with PPP is very infinitesimal.
Then the result?
Compared to the project costs. This is a clear, decent sharing of risks and rewards for growth over long term. However, I have a concern. If the antecedent of a president is anything to go by, he says he's a reformed Democrat, and I believe him. Okay, yes, I do believe him. Okay. We must see that he is not not tilting to the state ownership
of.
See, for you to agree for PPP, you must be one that says, you know what, the market is a free market economy, which is people should come in, invest, and take rewards and go away. If you're the type that say governments should own assets, if you're that type of individual, PPP will not hold water.
Are we going to get an example of what he really is about with the plan for Nigeria Airways?
Now, those are the things I'm talking about. When you're trying to do that, it still gives us an inclination as to your mindset.
It depends on what the plan is.
No, when Nasiru El-Rufai was in charge of BPE, that was when Obasanjo regime, people came after him and said, listen, you are selling our national patrimony. He said, listen, guys, you voted Obasanjo into power. His government policy is to sell off those assets so that they can become efficient.
Did it work?
Now, that is the policy of the man you voted into power. That's what I'm saying now. We need to understand what the president is thinking, how he wants to run this economy. If he believes in the state ownership of assets, you won't do anything.
For instance,
but if he's a reformed individual who believes, Rome Democrat, as he said, who believes that, you know what, and that format can work. It works in Dubai.
The airways.
No, we are government assets.
Yes, that's where I'm coming to. Just a moment here,
Yeah.
because we have to still go into what the blueprint reeled out by Mr. Fashola, when he talked about some key issues around his ministry. And recall he was talking about if you have a willing buyer, you definitely will have a willing seller.
Yes.
And that is about the PPP you're talking about. And what comes to mind is about the discos and even the Gencos. Of course, the government still has a hold on the transmission. Is that what you picture when you're talking about the aviation industry, for instance? You wanted to see more and more private people coming into the fray, and with a total hands-off by government?
Look, I like your question. What PPP does is to release critical funding, resources for you to deploy in critical areas. Then you will have the people who own war chests. Listen, when you did your telecommunication privatization, when you commercialize the telecommunication space, very few of the big boys came. Very, very few of them came.
Why do you think that was so?
No, you are such a risk. You are such a risk. Money does not go to where it is not welcomed.
But how do they like us now?
Now that's the thing. So the people that came, you've not gotten the big boys coming from the power.
Hold on, put this in perspective. Okay. Now we're going back into history. Don't forget, at that point in time, coupled with the risk you're trying to highlight, for instance, even the Adamawa, disco, in the heat of Boko Haram, we saw people who still came. They invested a lot of money, and you all know what happened finally when that was cancelled and how much money they now made by saying, hey, because there's a clause there in that particular contract. It's almost the same thing we saw with Econet.
Yeah.
And what finally went down when they just realized that they just couldn't move on and they had to sell out. So if you say the big boys at that point in time, they couldn't, they were afraid, is it about the big boys being afraid or neophytes and even inexperienced people who came into the fray then thinking that this is some kind of free money, only for them at the end of the day
to discover that they can't play.
Yeah, to just discover that they just can't play.
The key thing, sir, is that nature abhors vacuum.
Absolutely.
The moment the people that are supposed to play, let's say if you destroy your house, you already inherit the wind. It means where the house is standing, something can occupy it. But if they come in, these ones will frail out. There's something that's happening to your power. Siemens, G, they are the big boys. So the point I'm making here is that, and there's nothing wrong in new people coming in with the right partnerships and all, but it must be a government focus. If you notice, sometimes you see some of these people come out and say, oh, we're not going to have subsidy next year. So then they come back again and say, we're going to have subsidy. So we're going to do this. So you will see some, you don't see a coordination as to government policy.
Why is that
so? It is a leadership issue.